All right, erudites, tell me how many American presidents are not buried in the United States?
3.
Four.
4. John, Nixon, Carter.
Right.
Reagan.
All right.
Reagan. We got about the one who's in there.
Another test. Does the sun go around the earth, or does the earth go around the sun?
They go around each other.
How so?
They both oscillate around the center of gravity.
Well, I've never had that. You've completely confused me. I was going to suggest that all of you knew that the earth orbits the sun. But before Copernicus, why, everybody knew that the sun went around the earth because you can see it. And I'm suggesting that that's the way it is in economics. What you see on the surface is not always so. And the free market, as Milton Friedman says, takes a subtlety of understanding. It's awfully easy to see that if a thing needs doing, you pass a law, and harder to see that the law might actually confute what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, and that laissez-faire, a policy of stay out, might work. So I'm going to try to demonstrate to you tonight that the class struggle, the doctrine of the class struggle, is fallacious, so that it's a myth, that in fact there is no class struggle, although it's almost universally believed that there is one. And then, beyond theory, try to show why wages rise. What is the process whereby wages rise? We talk about what's seen and what is not seen. Well, the class struggle, this idea of hostility between employers and employees, between management and labor, as I say, is almost universal. And let me give you some illustrations. You will pick up the paper in the morning and you'll read, if you're in Milwaukee, about Miller Brewing Company workers being on strike, or in some other town about some other company employees being on strike. And you see the management resisting wage increases, trying to hold their costs down. And the workers bargaining collectively, going on strike if necessary to get an increased proportion of the product, and therefore obviously there is an opposition of interest, and there really is an antagonism between the employer and the employee. Therefore, ipso facto, there is in effect a class struggle. And this belief is widespread, as I say, and some quotes that I have here will tend to demonstrate that. Here's a quotation from the papal encyclical Quadragesimo Anno, in which it is said that the demand and the supply of labor divides men on the labor market into two classes as into two camps. And the bargaining between these parties transforms this labor market into an arena where the two armies are engaged in combat. Here's Jack London. The whole history of mankind has been a history of contests between exploiting and exploited. A stage has been reached whereby the exploited cannot attain its emancipation without once and for all emancipating society at large from all future exploitation, oppression, class distinction, and class struggles. The Wall Street Journal says that the Commerce and Labor Departments remarked recently that the interests of labor and management are naturally antagonistic. UAW President Douglas Fraser, speaking in the Freeman, May 1981, was quoted as saying that the Chrysler Board, as a Chrysler Board director, his new role, quote, would not alter the traditional adversary relationship between the UAW and the auto companies, unquote. Get that, an adversary relationship. And Jay Mazur, also a union business agent, saying, with all due respect to the employers who are my adversaries, they wouldn't pay anyone $1 an hour. And then finally, a quotation from the Toronto Globe and Mail saying, I guess we in Canada must accept the inevitability of enmity, mistrust, outright warfare between employers and employees. We must also accept as inevitable the economic consequences thereof, which are already starting to show themselves in the unemployment figures. So it's not a rare thing to read about this idea of class struggle. Almost everybody believes it, that the working man, the businessman, for instance, might say, well, at one time, the employers had things all their own way, and the unions were necessary and collective bargaining was necessary, and maybe it's gone too far now, but it was necessary to have unions at one time, and that's because of this belief in the class struggle. Karl Marx, in his little minor tract called Wage, Labor, and Capital, said What is the general law that determines the rise and fall of wages and profit in their reciprocal relation? He says they stand in inverse proportion to each other. The share of capital increases in the same proportion in which the share of labor falls, and vice versa. So he says there is a reciprocal or an inverse relationship between profits and wages, that there is a class struggle. So it's evident that there's a class struggle, and I'm suggesting to you that it's evident in the same sense that it's evident that the sun goes around the earth. It appears that the sun's going around the earth. You see it rise in the east and cross the heavens and set in the west. It appears that it goes around the earth, when in fact it only appears that way because the earth is turning on its axis. That there, in fact, you're seeing something that doesn't exist. And because it's widely believed that there is a class struggle, the answer found behind the Iron Curtain is collective ownership of the means of production, of the mines, the mills, the factories. And the answer on this side of the Iron Curtain is democratic socialism, regulation, collective bargaining, and that sort of thing. But on both sides of the Iron Curtain, the idea of class struggle is ubiquitous. There's a dichotomy between the people who believe in the free society and the people who believe in a collectivized society. And if I had to chart that on the board, and one side put the free society and the other side command, you'd find that the people who believe in the free society and those who believe in the command society do not argue about goals. They do not have differences about goals. You find that almost everybody is in favor of high wages, is in favor of peace and prosperity, and in favor of liberty. But the reason that they divide is because they have different fears. The people on this side fear what they associate with the command society. They look on this as being apt to produce political oppression, the Gulag Archipelago, denial of civil rights. And the people on this side are afraid of what they associate with freedom. They would say this leads to exploitation, it leads to unemployment, it leads to poverty. But they all believe in prosperity, peace, and freedom. Well, there are other names for a free society. How about laissez-faire? Laissez-faire is a term that's associated with Adam Smith. It was originally derived by the French physiocrats, and it was Gournay, the physiocrat, who said, laissez-faire, laissez-passer, le monde va de lui-même. Any Frenchmen here? Let it function, let it pass, the world works by itself. It will just stay out, and a natural order will obtain if people are left to pursue their own resources, to pursue without interference their own resources. Another name might be capitalism, which was a term I think originally derived by Karl Marx. And on this side, other terms might be socialism. Now, Marx and Engels used the term socialism and communism interchangeably. And by what they meant was in no way connected with what we call communism and socialism today. Marx, in the Communist Manifesto, just tore up the utopian socialists, and he derided them, and he eliminated the various kinds of socialism, and he then gave us Marxian socialism, or scientific socialism, which he said would obtain ultimately after the proletarian revolution. Then ultimately the political state would wither away and the good society would have arrived. But Marx and Engels used the term socialism and communism interchangeably. Today we tend to think of communism as that order which obtains behind the Iron Curtain. And socialism, we think, is the system such as in England or in Sweden where the government appropriates the wealth and then redistributes it. But there are many kinds of socialism.